YouTube, we're back here at our desert Hava garden, and we just wanted to show you something a little different than gardening today. While gardening is one of my passions, cooking is another. So I want to show you what we do with all these cowpeas. I'm going to show you how to make some Hoppin. And black-eyed peas are something that are known for good luck, and a lot of people eat them on New Year's Day, and it's supposed to bring you good luck into the new year. Now, this recipe is a traditional favorite, so I'll show you how we get started with that. First off, I want to mention that the one pest we experience in the garden with our cowpeas is ants, and they seem to get into these top stems and they bore down, and they seem to prevent growth and prevent the plant from producing more peas. I don't know if you can see here, but there's some red ants on here. Now, what I find to be really effective, natural way to treat the ants is just your typical cinnamon. So I just sprinkle cinnamon around the garden. This is just your cheap cinnamon you can get. I wouldn't use your fancy organic or any of that, but I just sprinkled around the tops, and it seems to help keep rid of the ants. Now, it's very windy here, so it'll blow off, and then we just sprinkle some more. Now, for making our Hoppin', we harvest our beans, and so you can either break them off or you can cut them off with scissors. It's easier to do it with scissors when you have more than one hand to work with. And so I've got a few that I've already harvested today, but we will go ahead and use some others that we've been collecting over the course of the last week. The blue goose variety is our heaviest producer. That's what all of these plants are here. They're the blue goose, and they just have pods coming out everywhere. And so we're getting ready to make our recipe. Now we're back inside, and I have my helper here to help me shell out the peas out of the bean pods. The kids really like to help with this part, and it gives them something to do in the garden. Plus, kids are more likely to eat things and try new things if they've been a part of the process. So here my boy is helping shell these peas. Now, while we call them cowpeas, they're actually a member of the legume family, so they are a bean. Though they can be eaten fresh without hardening, or they can be eaten after hardening if you want to store them in the cupboard. So these are just the few that we harvested today. And what we do is we take those, and then here is the jar that we have been collecting over the last week. And we'll just rinse these all off really well. We're going to make a big batch here. This ought to make a nice big pot. So we'll just rinse these real well in cool water. And because we have some hard beans in here, not all of them were harvested exactly fresh, we're going to soak them in some water for a few hours. Put them into a nice big pot. And we have really poor water quality here, so I don't even soak them in sink water. I pour in some filtered water out of our Berkey filter. I like to know that we don't have chlorine and fluoride and any other junk in our water. So we've got them all in here. We'll let them soak for a couple hours, and then I'll come back and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, I'm back. I've had these beans soaking for about 6 hours now. They're a little bit fatter, more fluffy, full of water. First, we're going to rinse them off, drain them and rinse them. And I don't like to use too many pans for cooking because I also do the cleanup around here. So I'm going to use the same pan to cook in. We're going to be using aromatic vegetables. So we have an onion we got from our friends over at the homestead, and this celery here, I'm using just a half a stalk of celery because it was grown in our aquaponics, and it is highly fragrant. It's almost too much to eat on its own, so I'm just using a half stalk. But if you're getting it from the grocery, maybe use 2 stalks of celery. Also a few cloves of garlic chopped up, and then we'll use some meat. So I like to use about 4 slices of bacon chopped, or you can use a ham hock, also salt pork, but pretty much pork items are what you'll want to use. So we'll get this over onto the stove here, get it turned on, and we'll start cooking the bacon to get it greasing up, and then after there's some grease we'll throw in the aromatics. We've got our bacon sizzling now, and we're going to leave the bacon grease in there. I'm not too worried about the fat content because we don't eat bacon all that often. But what I do worry about is the nitrates in bacon. Bacon and hot dogs and lunch meat, all of that usually has nitrates, which are very bad for us, bad for kids especially. And so I get the nitrate-free bacon. You pay a little bit more, but it's better quality for you. And now we're going to add the onions and the celery. We want to get them nice and transparent. The vegetables are nice and soft now. And those little brown bits at the bottom of the pan are good. They just add extra flavor. You don't want them to get black, but as long as you're stirring, you should be all right. Next thing we're going to add in are 5 cups of chicken broth. Now I make my own chicken broth, so I'm adding 5 cups of water. And then I'll add some of the chicken bouillon that I use. Okay, and that makes my chicken broth. We'll also add the black-eyed peas or the cowpeas, whatever you have right now. These are the cowpeas from our garden. Nice and rinsed, and they've been soaked. So there's our beans. Stir them up. And if you don't like much spice, you can skip it, but we like a little shake of cayenne pepper in there. Some people like to add Tabasco, maybe at the very last step, but I think a little shake of cayenne will be nice. So we'll bring this to a light boil, and then we'll cover it and let it simmer for about 30 minutes. You want to check on it periodically just to make sure it doesn't get dry. It's been 35 minutes. And we have a nice gentle boil going on over here. That's something to pay attention to when you're making soups and stews. If you have a gentle boil, you'll have a more clear broth, and they call that a more delicate broth. If you have a rapid boil, it'll make your broth thicker and more cloudy. So this turned out very nicely. It's a little bit bland. The chicken broth I use doesn't have very much salt in it, so I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt, and then for a little bit of tang we'll go ahead and add 2 tablespoons of vinegar, and then we just stir this up. I cooked a big batch of brown rice yesterday, so I've got the brown rice ready, and so we'll just ladle a little bit of the Hoppin over top of a bowl of rice. You want to make sure you get lots of broth. And there's your supper, Hoppin'. Now, there's always variations on this, and if you would like, you can also do add-ins. For example, when you were doing sauteing the onions and the celery, you could have thrown in a bell pepper, whatever color you like. You could change the meat around. Some people like it with more broth or less broth, and you can use a variety of different types of cowpeas. But that's your Hoppin'. Enjoy!